Would you consider Brantford a bedroom community?
Bedroom sounds too grand. More like mattress. like more like mattress on floor. I'm sorry, Brantford.
My hometown messed me up. She won big on a Timmy's Cup. I heard about it at the Rotary Club. That's so Canardian. Still don't stop.
This is Canardian, the podcast that's gossiping about Canadian hometowns. I'm Katie Lohr, author of Pod the North, the newsletter for Canadian podcasters, and I am joined by a very special guest for a very special episode, Falen Johnson, the co-host of The Secret Life of Canada from CBC Podcasts, the podcast revealing the beautiful, terrible, and weird histories of this land. Falen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. Big fan of the show. I love a hometown dish.
Oh my God, I'm so pumped to have you here with me. Full disclosure, this could go any which way. Falen, where is your hometown and how would you describe the vibe of it in 5 words or less?
Oh God, right. The 5 words or less thing. So I'm from Brantford and Six Nations. So my home community, my reserve is Six Nations, Great River Territory. I'm Mohawk and Tuscarora. That's where my grandma is, my dad, my stepmom, my siblings, my uncle, my cousins. There's lots of people who live there still. But I live in Montreal. But I also grew up in Brantford because once my parents split up, as parents did in the 80s, and I guess maybe still do. Anyway.
They still do to this day, I've heard.
That divorce is still a thing, right? So I kind of spent my childhood in between two spaces. So it's really hard because to split the 5 words between the two spots is going to be really tricky.
Go.
Smoking in cars, windows up.
Wow. Okay.
I think that might have more to do with an era than maybe a location.
No, Falen, I have to say, I think you're right on the money. I mentioned this episode is very special to me because I moved to Brantford a few years ago. And this was after having lived sort of in and around the Toronto area my whole life. And when we were looking at houses, I literally cried when I realized that Brantford was the only place that we would be able to afford a house. And although it is certainly a city full of characters and problems, I actually really do love Brantford. I love being a local here now.
I am so curious. Because I lived in a lot of different places in Brantford. Because my parents were trying to figure it out. So they were getting back together and then splitting up and then getting back together. So we were bouncing between the reserve and Brantford a lot while they tried to figure it out. I spent because once I moved back to the res sort of more full time when I was in high school and I was living with my dad, but I would go to Brantford on the weekends to go stay with my mom and be a bad kid. Those are the things about Brantford that I remember the most is the trouble I got up to as a teenager and then going home back to the res and being a good girl. And my dad, I don't think he knew what I was getting up to. Because if he did, I don't think he'd let me go.
I think I would go so far as to say that Brantford is kind of the Bermuda Triangle of Ontario. People know about it. They know it exists, but no one really knows what goes on around here. And everybody knows it's just weird shit. Weird shit happens in Brantford.
Yeah. And let me know if I'm going to step on your toes here, but you know who I am. Please. And what I do, which is history. And so I've done the digging into Brantford a little bit, not a lot.
This is why you would be an excellent guest on this podcast.
Yeah. But Brantford was on par to be a large city, after Toronto and Montreal. It was supposed to be Brantford, right? There was a big industry there. It has the beautiful what's the name of the theater? It's totally going out of my head.
Oh, the Sanderson Theater?
Yes, the Sanderson Center. So a beautiful vaudeville-style theater with a beautiful mural on the ceiling. And so it has all this infrastructure. And when you drive through it, you see dilapidated Victorian houses and mansions. And And it's confusing because it's like Grey Gardens in Southern
Yeah.
Ontario.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best way to describe it. But then there's also these like sort of like post-war like little bungalows in like Eagle Place and like sort of factory home homes. So people who are working in all of the factories, because it was a booming industry.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't. And I mean, growing up, I was born in 1982, and so my first sort of stint of living in Brantford would have been the 80s. It was the late 80s. So this is back when downtown Brantford still had two sides of Colborne Street, right? Because they've now torn down one side and made way for university, and it looks much better in all fairness. But when I was a kid walking down that street, I thought it was really cool, but it also was like quite decrepit. But there was comic book stores, there was second wave records, there was Fun Time. That was the arcade where everyone went to buy drugs. But like it was.
It feels like 80s, 90s Brantford was like closer to the vibe that Hamilton is now.
I wonder. You know,
I wonder.
There was something magical about that space because it hadn't fully, like, I was there watching it sort of decline. You know, like I was watching the decline happen. Around me, but I was like sort of coming of age at that time. So there was lots of things there was lots of trouble for kids to get up to. Like there was like lots of pockets of places for us to get into trouble. I mean, it was usually the mall. Victoria Park, I spent many summers in that park as a little goth kid. I was so goth. Like we were all goth. There was like a big group of us who all hung out in the park, and everybody was like drinking underage and smoking weed and being bad kids and making out, and it was amazing. Like it was amazing. It's like what you wanted from your teenage life. But I'm not sure if you know about the curse.
I know about the curse of the mall.
Okay.
1 Market Street. I know that it's been covered on Secret Life of Canada, and I used it as part of my trailer for the first season of this show.
So the curse, as I understand it, because it has different, depending on where you are reading about it or learning about it or hearing about it, it has different roots. But there was a woman from Six Nations, Alma Green, who was unhappy with the way that the market square was being run, and there was some racism in terms of this market where everyone was coming to sell their things, and then people from Six Nations weren't allowed to come. And so she placed a curse on the market, saying that Brantford, that area of town would never prosper. And so this is the area of Colborne Street. So this is where the record store was, where Funtown was, where all of these businesses were that I watched decline. And so for
that
me,
that explains it.
It all made sense in my mind. Like, and I grew up just knowing the curse. Like, I don't remember not knowing the curse. We all just knew that the curse. Yeah. And so as it crumbled around us, it all made perfect sense because
The
it
curse.
was just, yeah, we were like, okay, well, yeah, this is what's going to happen. This is what's
It's the
supposed to happen.
prophecy of Brantford.
Yeah. And I mean, and now it looks very different. Like once the universities came in and started investing and, you know, putting in other things. I've spent less time there now, but whenever I'm there, it's one of those weird feelings where it's like you feel like walking through a space that you used to walk through and you haven't walked through it in years, so everything feels smaller than it used to be.
Yes, like walking through your old elementary school. Okay, here, let me give you the tourism pitch, okay?
Okay, yes.
Here we go. Brantford, Ontario, slogan is Industria Perseverantia, which is a Latin phrase meaning industry and perseverance. Some people also refer to it as the telephone city, as it is the place where Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone in 1874. Though this is widely claimed around various towns in Canada, so that might not actually be true. It is certainly true, however, that this is the birthplace of the first long-distance phone call from Brantford to Paris, which was just 2 years later. And this is also the birthplace of Canadian hockey legend and big-time Trumper Wayne Gretzy.
Wayner. Yeah, like
that's our boy.
You can't escape that shadow. It'll be cast over you, Katie, for your entire time living there.
It hurts.
It's Great swimming center, though. I used to love swimming at that Gretzky athletic center in the summertime.
The Wayne Gretzy
Loved
Sports
it.
Center, I literally was just there a few days ago doing a full body HIIT workout class with a bunch of little old ladies. And let me tell you, it kicked my butt.
Yeah, no. Like he did give us this. Thank you, Wayne.
Brantford is located on the Haldimand Treaty, the original keepers of the land being the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, and today its population is somewhere around 110,000 people. And because, last but not least, it is the center of the universe, Brantford is about a 1 hour and 15-minute drive from Toronto, but because of bottlenecking through Hamilton, and I'm saying this from experience, it's more like 2 hours to get to get to Toronto.
Yeah.
Falen, what stands out to you here? I think the Wayne Gretzky thing really stood out to you.
The Wayne Gretzky thing definitely stood out to me. I mean, and again, it was like anytime people would be like, "Oh my God, I saw Walter. Walter Gretzky was in Wendy's." Like seeing Walter was like the big thing in Brantford because his parents still lived there. I think for me, like the thing. When I think about Brantford and when I'm there, which I have to admit, I have some trauma around Brantford, just from, I think if you're coming of age anywhere, you generally have trauma around that place. Yes. But I was also like left to my own devices a lot in Brantford, which was like, I really tested the waters of like my personal safety as a young person. I hung out at the bus station a lot. I smoked a lot of like stolen Players Light cigarettes from my mom. Like I learned to smoke cigarettes in Brantford on a roof with me and my friend Miranda, just making ourselves sick, trying to teach ourselves to smoke. It was the first time I tried pot. There used to be these dances in Brantford called the Spinners dances when we were in like grade 7 and 8, and you would dye your hair with bingo dabber, and then you would go to the dances, and everybody had stolen liquor from their parents' cabinets or whatever, right? Like whatever, and everybody was getting messed up, and then they'd all go into the dance together, and then you would slow dance to Always by Bon Jovi, and then you would get tongue kissed. It was like the most romantic thing that had ever happened in my young person life. And it sounds so gross now.
Yeah, well, that's what you live for in grade 7, So here's the funny thing about Walter Gretzky, bringing it back to him somehow. Because
you're not going to bring up tongue kissing in Walter Gretzky, are you?
Walter Gretzky actually spent a lot of time in my hometown, Milton, Ontario. I don't know why exactly, but he was there like all the time. And we also had crazy dances that I attended every single one from grade 5 to grade 8 at the Milton Leisure Center. And we did the Much Music video dances. Oh my God. When I tell you I lived for those dances, I'm not even joking, Falen. I was the one at every dance you could buy your ticket to the next dance. There was one a month. I would strive to get ticket number 1. This is who I was.
And were you really dancing hard at these dances?
I don't think I was even dancing that hard. I think I just liked being there. Like, I don't know what my deal was. I just was thrilled to be there. This was like the event of the month.
I remember being like thrilled sometimes if I did get like a good tongue kiss in. But then I also remember being like, if no one liked me, being completely heartbroken. Like the emotions were just like so all over the place, where it's like if I didn't get attention, I was just destroyed. Just destroyed.
Yeah, your life's over.
Yeah, life was over until the next Spinners dance.
I'm so glad that we have so much nostalgia here, because I want to talk more about the vibe of Brantford. Mm-hmm. And I feel like nostalgia is deeply, deeply rooted into the vibe. And I will explain why in a second. But first, let me ask you this, Falen. What is a bedroom community?
It sounds more fun than it is. I'm like, that's when you... Is that when you commute to somewhere else? Like you're like living in one place, that's where you sort of sleep and live, and then you're commuting to work in another town or city.
Yeah,
is that
essentially
right?
That's the idea. Yeah, like it's a community where all you do there is you're just meant to sleep, and then you leave and you go to work and you go do all the other things. Would you consider Brantford a bedroom community?
Oof. Bedroom sounds too grand. More like mattress, like more like mattress on floor. I'm sorry, Brantford. I don't know. I think it might be more now. Like when I was growing up, I feel like I feel like it was, I mean, in some ways it was the big city to me because the res was the res. The res was like very, very rural compared to the big city of Brantford. But then when I got a little bit older, I started taking that beautiful Greyhound bus from Brantford to Toronto where I was like, ooh, a real city. And I'm not just going to shit all over Brantford the entire time. I swear to God. Because I have a lot of fondness for that time. Mostly like the amount of, I don't know, the growing that I did in that place.
Recklessness? I think they call it recklessness.
Yeah, reckless growth.
I think they call it fucking around and finding out.
I totally fucked around and found out. Totally.
I ask you this because I have finally found the opportunity that I've been desperately awaiting for on this podcast to address the absolute hatred that I got on a Brantford Facebook group when I first moved here. So moving here in 2021, and it was, the pandemic was like people were coming out of their shell a little bit. So I'm like desperate for some stuff to do here. I post on the Ask Anything and Everything Brantford Facebook group thinking this is a safe space. People will understand what I'm saying. Here's what I said. Okay, who's going to be the angel who opens up a barcade in Brantford? This city needs some damn nightlife. Now, looking back, I feel like I can see my Toronto history in that post. The Toronto is definitely showing there, but I will also say I was at the time moving out of a rural family home, and I was just like desperate for life in my life. So anyway, I don't feel like I needed to explain myself anyway on a Facebook group. I'm just asking who's got like fun stuff to do around here. I get all these people in the comments coming at me, telling me you shouldn't have moved to a bedroom community. Here are some of the comments, Falen. I'm just going to read them to you.
Okay.
Quote, gotta love when people move to a new town after being in the big city just to complain about what there isn't and expect people to accommodate them. Maybe you shouldn't have moved and caused the burden of inflated house prices and more for the people that have lived here for a long time and are quite fine with nothing to do in their lives. There has always been things to do out there that don't require big city accommodations if you make the effort to look for them. Somebody else said, you chose the city for cheap housing, and now we're supposed to entertain you as well? Falen, what is up with this hatred?
Now, Katie, listen, if smoking in the parking lot of the Tim Hortons isn't enough for you, then that's on you.
Get the fuck out of here.
Honestly, though, I'm like, that it's not a huge ask, and you can't say that like they would. These people wouldn't enjoy that either. You wouldn't like a barcade. Who doesn't like a barcade? A barcade's great. I'm like,
barcades are great.
Yeah.
What's wrong with a barcade? But no,
I like the person saying you moved somewhere where there's nothing to do. It's like, okay.
Oh yeah. So, a lot of people are quite fine with having done nothing all their lives. That's the line for me. Oh my
God. But there was, okay. I'm like, there were things to do. Like there were.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there still are. I'm like,
this
what's
is the
there
thing,
to do?
Falen. There's not a whole lot going on here. What I was really lucky to find a group of people and a community that was putting on some really cool punk shows here. So that's been really cool to attend to. And they've been really big in the community and like getting some cool stuff going on. But otherwise, there really isn't a lot of stuff going on. And I think the notion of if you're not happy smoking cigarettes in the Tim Hortons parking lot, then like that is exactly it. Like you have to find the fun. And near my house, there is a place called Buck's Tavern that is clearly a place just mostly attended by regulars. Yeah. But they have like karaoke nights and trivia nights and live band nights. And when I tell you both times I've been to Buck's were some of the most fun nights of my entire life.
Yep.
You can definitely find fun in Brantford. And this is what a lot of people are recommending, like billiards lounges. Like,
but I think that's like, because I think, especially in like, in any city, there are people who are like, I love a dive bar. And it's like, there are probably plenty of bars that have that vibe in Brantford that would give you that fix in like the best possible way.
I didn't put this in my script, but I have to tell you, Falen. So there's another, because basically once you decide that you're going to love the quirky, like weird, scuzzy bars here, you're like, okay, like where there are so many. I'm going to explore them all. We're going to have a pub crawl night, whatever
You want
it
to be
might
careful. You want to be careful with that.
That's the thing, Falen. That is very much the thing. So there is a bar also near my house called Ketchabuzz. And we were like, okay, this place looks kind of fun, kind of weird and hilarious. And it's like kind of built into a house a little bit, and has some weird like patio furniture. So we were like, haha, we're going to check it out. And we were telling our new neighbor this one day, and she was like, don't go there. She was saying that basically next door, we have a porch pirates problem here in Brantford. People steal packages off of people's porches. And so this lady who lived next door to Ketchabuzz, her package had gone missing. And then I guess at some point she decided to go over to Ketchabuzz and saw the guy from her Ring camera who stole her package. And she got up and just pointed at him and was like, you stole my package. Like, what the hell? And the guy got up and just busted out a knife and was like, F you, lady. And like the whole bar rose up and fought him off, and he ran down the street, and then a whole bunch of SWAT vehicles were like called, and they were all looking for him.
Yeah, that sounds like Brantford.
Yeah.
I just feel like I stepped in a warm bath hearing that story.
Yeah. Overall, I'd say like Brantford is really an underdog, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Don't you think Brantford feels haunted too? I've always gotten that vibe. I'm like, man,
here's a fun fact for you.
Yes. Is it about ghosts? I got so excited.
When they filmed the Silent Hill movie here, it was filmed in Brantford in 2006, 2009. The crew kept saying how awesome it was that they barely had to do anything to downtown to achieve the ghost town feel of it. And yeah, it's very much the case. Now you keep saying that like you don't want to like talk too much smack about Brantford, but you're not alone, Falen. You're not alone, because overall I would say Brantford, it's brought up in a variety of subreddits out there. And most of them are not like super great. It came up in a Brantford group called What is the Crappiest City in Ontario and Why? And then another one, was Brantford better in the 90s?
I can speak to, like, I'm like, yes, it was. I mean,
yes.
in my mind, but I was like not paying rent or like, taxes really. Like, I was a child. So yeah, everything was probably better for me in the 90s. But yeah, that does not surprise me. That does not surprise me at all.
Yeah. Amongst the negativity, because there is quite a bit out there are like dozens and dozens of comments all over Reddit and Facebook that are all filled with nostalgia. Everything is just like, remember this place, or oh, this place was so good. So it seems like people miss the fun, but like maybe it's more of a sense of like the good old days. Like, what do you think that is?
I mean, I think it did have the feeling of being, it had a different kind of potential to it, or a feeling of potential to it. I think in the late 80s and the 90s, like there was like, I mean, the Eaton Center was still open for one thing. There were still stores in there. Like I remember I went in there to get my Christmas picture. Like I sat on Santa's lap in that mall when it was a proper mall with lots of like stores, like full on stores.
Yeah.
And I remember
that mall is mostly like student centers and like I don't know, dry cleaning places. Like it's not much going on in there now.
I saw that happen. Like I saw that like it go from mall to alternative school. Yeah. And it happened so quickly. It felt like so quickly. But that was also kind of cool because there was like a movie theater, like the movie theater downtown that now is I think part of one of the universities. It used to cost $2. Like, so we could go, so
what
kids,
the hell?
so kids could go in, and like go watch a movie for, I think I saw Batman Forever there.
That's our dream for Brantford. That's what we've been daydreaming of having, is like a small independent theater.
It had a punk vibe to it, like 100%. It had a real punk vibe to it. And like in the summertime, in the 90s, like all these like hippie, goth, punk, grunge kids hanging out in that park downtown around that statue of Joseph Brant, doing a bunch of things they shouldn't have been doing, you know, but there's always somebody playing guitar, and a bunch of people pretending that he's good at it, because that's just the kind of power a man with a guitar has.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there was something that felt really fun about being there in that moment. And again, it was so different from the res, right? Where it was like you go to the res and like, you know, like the first time I went on the internet was in Brantford at the public library. And I think it's coupled with the time in my life that it was like the first time and the only time that I ever ran away from home was in Brantford. And I didn't make it far, but I was mad at my mom and my stepdad because they sucked. And I remember they came home from being out at the bar, and they came home and they were just being pricks to me and like trying to needle me because I had been grounded for talking back or doing something. I was expressing my independence as a young woman.
Who, you?
Who, me? I know. And so I had like done all my laundry and cleaned my room and like packed a bag and waited for them to go to bed, and then woke up really early the next morning with like a handful of change because I was like 12 or something. Got on the bus, went downtown, went to the Eaton Center, wandered around for a while, went to the library, wandered around for a while, got on another bus, went to the Linden Park Mall.
Falen.
I know, right? I was just malling around. And then I eventually like ended up at the Santa Claus parade with one of my friends and her families. And then she was like, my friend's mom was like, I have to take you to your mom now. And that was the end of my big runaway. But my mom was really mad. And I actually went. It was the only time I ran away. It was for less than a day, but you know, it was also
that was
like
a significant trip though. Like,
I
feel like if I ran away
2 miles in a library.
Living large. Large. A couple last things about the vibe of Brantford. People often, you have to call out the amount of crime and very obvious opioid crisis happening here. That is a big part of what people know about Brantford. So that is something that significantly needs to be addressed. And overall, the place is notable enough that filmmaker Kevin Smith announced in 2014 that he'd be making a movie about a famous porn star who leaves the industry to return to his hometown of Brantford, Ontario. I don't think the movie got made, though.
Yeah, I've never heard of this.
Yeah, it was just announced in 2014, and then I couldn't find any traces of the movie anywhere. But apparently, Brantford is significant enough for Kevin Smith to be thinking about. Okay, I actually do have some stories for you, so let's get into them.
Okay.
I'm going light on the Brantford gossip story because I really want to get into this Six Nations one that I have. But I just want to throw it out there because I feel like this was recent news. Did you hear about, at the end of last year, a local story blew up on TikTok about this woman named Kaitlyn who was scamming birth doulas in the area? Did you hear about this?
Yes, it's very on brand for Brantford, I feel.
So I remember seeing TikToks from doulas warning others to stay away from this woman at the time. This was before like charges were officially laid. So doulas are caregivers hired to provide guidance and support to pregnant women, specifically during labor. So they're there to advocate for the woman rather than the baby. And Kaitlyn was faking pregnancies and hiring doulas to help her before and during quote unquote labor. So she would tell them all this traumatic stuff about like her pregnancy, and then she'd fake actual labor and contractions and like even her water breaking. She would like use a water bottle and stuff to like fake her water breaking. And it's not funny. It's fucked up, but it's so Brantford. So from a Reddit post warning people at the time, quote, several doulas spent 2 to 3 entire days and nights with her while she was in, quote, labor. When they finally convinced her to go to the hospital, they find out that she was never pregnant. She did this to more than 20 people. In just like...
You know, the first, when I saw this story coming up, because she like pretend, like she puked too, like she would like throw up, like she was like, I mean, like it was something was real in her brain, I think, for her to be able to do that. I don't know. But when I first saw the story come up, I was like, oh, do I know her? Like, I totally was like, what's...
Do you?
What grade school did she go to? No. She's much younger than me. And I still don't know what grade school she went to. Sounds like a centennial girl if I've ever heard one.
At the end of 2023, she pled guilty to multiple charges of fraud, indecent acts, false pretenses, and mischief, and she was sentenced to 2 years of house arrest. Even though she got a mental health report that concluded that she was likely to reoffend. And then almost a year later, she pled guilty to more charges for incidents that happened while she was on house arrest. So this is obviously a horrific mental health story.
Yes. But also, I mean, let's be honest, there's no barcade in Brantford, so was house arrest that
what
bad?
What else are you supposed to do here?
God. Yes, that is, I mean, that is next level. Like, that's not, and there's something going on there. And I'm assuming now that, like, people are maybe trying to get her the, like, help that she needs to figure this out. But that is, like, to me, it was just like, oh, yeah.
So, Falen, you grew up in Six Nations of the Grand River, as you've mentioned, and Brantford, as you've mentioned. Six Nations is about a 10-minute drive from Brantford. Talk to me about the dynamic between the two.
Ooh.
In 5 words or less.
It is. Oh, Jesus Christ!
I'm kidding.
It is like, I mean, they are connected, and they have always been connected, right? Like the Grand River, which runs through Brantford down to Six Nations. Those places have always been connected, and like we would go to Brantford to get our groceries. Like the thing about the reserve, right, is if you're Indigenous and you end up shacking up with someone who is not Indigenous, you can't live on the res. So often people would live in Brantford. So if you were dating a non-Indigenous person or you got married to a non-Indigenous person, you're going to settle in a town generally around the reserve so that you can be close to family. So we are sort of scattered a lot in those communities around Six Nations. So it feels like there are a lot of us there. And because our reserve doesn't have a high school, many of our, like, you got to go to high school somewhere. Like, I went to Caledonia, but lots of people went to BCI or PJ, and those like, so we all have relationship to those cities around our reserve. And going to the city was, like, fun. I don't know what people in Brantford thought of the reserve. I'm sure there was, well, I do because I'm fairly white presenting. So people would say things to me. Like, I remember one fateful day standing outside the Brantford bus terminal smoking cigarettes, and this guy, it was me and my boyfriend at the time, and we were smoking cigarettes because that's what you did outside the bus station. And and this one guy, this white guy, starts going off about how he hates Indigenous people and F this, F that. And I was just standing there, and my boyfriend at the time turns to him and he's like, well, she's Native, right? And he was like, oh. So I know that, like, the racism, the proximity also creates a tension of that. And I saw that come up a lot. And I wonder how it is now. I mean, the climate has changed a lot, I would hope.
I mean, from my perspective, I've only been here for like 3-ish years at this point. But as you've mentioned, Brantford has the highest proportion of Indigenous people in Southern Ontario outside of a reserve. And that makes sense. It's right next door. Yeah. And it was interesting for me moving here because I'd actually never, and I didn't realize it, lived somewhere with so many Indigenous people.
I mean, and I wonder, because, like, when I was a kid and I was going to school in Brantford, like when I was in grade school, we would go to the Woodland Cultural Center for class trips all the time, right? So the Woodland Cultural Center, also known as the Mohawk Institute, and the Mush Hole, so the former residential school, oldest residential school in Canada. A residential school that my great-grandma went to, my mom's dad went to. I had no idea. I had no idea what that building was. when I was a kid going there. So I was going into that building and like playing like educational games, going through the museum that I think probably still looks pretty much the same. Walking through there, pictures of people who are related to me on the wall in there, which I didn't know until I was much older. And then I don't know when, but it just took years and years and years for it slowly to come together for me. Like it was just a distance that my brain had to cross when I finally realized and understood what that place was and what it. And then it took, like, I didn't find out that my mom's dad went there until a couple of years ago. Like, when the 215 out of Kamloops happened, one of my aunts posted something on Facebook about her dad going there, and I was like, oh. So there's still, like, so much about that space and what that, but, like, we drove by it all the time. I was inside it. I had no idea what that building was. I had no idea. And so I feel like now we all kind of know, if you're in Brantford, that building is very apparent, and what it is very apparent. And so I feel like that, gives me hope for change. And I don't want to say like having a residential school is a point of pride, but I think what that building has become is something that I think Brantford can celebrate, the way that it has been taken, and the art that it houses and the work that it does. I think it's something that Brantford should put on the water tower. No,
That's really interesting because I actually haven't checked out that place, and it is so close to my house too. I haven't gone and looked yet, but I've been really curious to go there. But you're right, like you drive by it all the time. I do because like it's kind of on the outskirts a little bit. Yeah. And my partner loves going to the dump, and it's on the way to the dump. I don't know what else.
Oh man, you are in it. You are in it.
Yeah. No, I'm in it. I'm really in it. I see a lot of reconciliation work happening here. Not enough. When I first moved here, there was actually a land back movement happening at Arrowdale.
Yeah, and I mean things are slow. I mean, like you move at the pace that you can. But I think like the progress that I've seen in my lifetime is definitely, I could consider it progress.
Okay, fun fact about Six Nations. The reserve is so big that it's visible from space, and you can see it because there is so much forest cover there, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm. That's our North Carolinian forest. Yep.
Falen, I want to talk to you about the Latern Festival that took place. It took over the entire reserve in 2022. Does this ring a bell to you?
I remember this, but I was like, when is this? Because it's like sounds so. Oh. I was like, who's what? Like, I'm like, this is not something that would happen down there. It just sounds question. It sounds so out of character for us.
So, yes, it's 2022. People are finally emerging after 2 years of lockdown, desperate to get out in the world, but obviously still a little cautious about crowds and indoor spaces. So what better way to get together than a festival of lights? Am I right?
Oh my God. Like anywhere but there, you really don't want to like see a bunch of pissed off Haudenosaunee people. Like, man, this is not your janky ass fire festival. Like, take your lights somewhere else.
So summer 2022, an end of summer party is announced, and it's called The Lights. And it's put on by a Utah-based events company called Vive Events. And it's advertised as taking place in the Toronto area. But when you go to the website, the party website, which still exists, the location is just, quote, Johnson Farm. Do you know
no relation?
Johnson
I don't.
Farm?
It's not my farm. I swear to God, no, it's not my farm. It's not my farm.
Interesting.
No, I looked up the address because I was like, oh, so it's near Willow Grove, which used to be a store where I would go and get stickers for my sticker book and like candy and things like that back in the day, near the CGC mine where my dad used to work for like 25 years. But it's like, it's so I can see why they picked there because it's sort of on the border of the reserve. So maybe they thought they
Okay.
could get away with it or something. But yeah, I'm like, I saw some of the people who commented and I was like, ooh. Like it is just not going to go over well, especially coming out of COVID where we had locked down our borders. And then you've got a bunch of people showing up with like, I don't know, devil sticks and like Joker hats and hacky sacks and they want to fly their lanterns. That is not going to fly. That is not going to fly. I hope someone showed up in a headdress and they just like somebody in a headdress just holding 2 lanterns, really wanting to set them off and being denied.
Oh. So here's the event description. The Lights is a magical evening that will create memories to last a lifetime. Come celebrate as we put our inhibitions to the side and our dreams to the sky. In one night, you can change what you want. In one night, you can change what you want to become. Let go of your fears and embrace your true self. Join us as we light the fire within. Falen, are you attending The Lights?
Has it not been clear? No, I don't think so. No thanks. Like, yeah, get your fire away from our forest, our beautiful forest that's visible from space. Get out of here.
So this is actually part of a series of events at the time that is taking place in cities across the US and Canada, where people release, you've mentioned lanterns, those rice paper lanterns that you have to light with the flame, and then they go into the fire and they go into the sky and supposedly combust and disappear into nothingness because nothing bad could happen from lighting fuel into the sky on fire. So you have to click the link in the description on the event website to read what they call read the participant package here for event details. And that's where you get more details about the event. The participant packet is where it is actually revealed that the venue is in fact Johnson Farm in Ohsweken, Ontario, which is 6 Nations. And here are some highlights. What to bring: chairs, blankets, food, water, umbrella, plenty of drinking water to help you stay cool and hydrated. Plenty of drinking water is bolded. Guess what? 6 Nations doesn't really have a great drinking water situation.
No.
What a place to select.
Yeah, some folks do. Some folks got water now, but not everybody, that's for sure. Wow. Yeah.
Here's another one. After the lantern launch, you are welcome to hang out with us and enjoy our music during the after party. Because this event is held in a rural area of small back roads, traffic exiting the event can get heavy, so please be patient. Thoughts?
Ugh. It just like I'm like on an organizational level purely that sounds terrible. Like all the red flags going up. Like who the hell is in charge of this? And two, I just cannot imagine because like I know the highway that they would have to go down to get there. You got to go down Highway 6 headed towards Port Dover. But I mean, like you're gonna see where the standoff. The Caledonia standoff happened in 2005. Like, you're going to see all of the land back signs. Like, what is not tipping you off, Coachellas? I'm like, this is not... And you'd be driving right into it.
Yeah. So 6 Nations elected council actually told the festival that they would not authorize the flying of the lanterns as the threat of loss due to the fire is far too great. The festival went ahead anyway. Falen, this is a little bit of what I was hinting at too. The festival is in the middle of some field in 6 Nations, only rural roads to get in and out. What problems do you foresee here?
Oh, did we blockade?
Traffic.
No, I'm like, just like, we do love a blockade. You do not want to. Oh my God.
You could easily be So I've been to the Oshwegan Speedway in Six Nations. It's a really popular spot for, I think, there's stock car races.
Yeah, that's really close to my parents' house.
So Oshwegan Speedway is also where a lot of big powwows happen. But the traffic in and out is a minefield. You have to like time your exit perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
Or just make sure you have a full tank of gas, or just exercise patience.
And especially if bingo's getting out, right? Because if bingo's getting out on the other side of 54 and you're trying to go, nightmare.
Yeah. So Oshwegan, 10 minutes away, but it's actually take you 40 minutes to get home. Needless to say, the day of the festival is a mess. The roads are absolutely packed and people start going rogue. So one person told CBC Hamilton, quote, "People were cutting through our fields and through our driveway and damaging my cousin's crops. It was literally an invasion of people who had no idea they were on a reserve. There were thousands of people who were frustrated, pissed off, and only to be turned away. It was completely disorganized. People were urinating up and down the road." Insanity.
Yeah. I can't imagine what that was like. That is terrible.
Yeah. The police were called, and they started to turn people away and send them back home. So one woman who had driven all the way from Woodbridge and had paid $122 for 2 tickets, got stuck in traffic on the way to the event and turned around and sent home. But despite the amount of people getting turned away, a number of people still did get to participate in the event. One local saying she saw at least 300 lanterns floating through the air.
I'm really judging these people. I don't know why lanterns is making me think that they're headdress wearing Coachella people.
I can't help but it feels like cultural appropriation to me. It just screams it.
There's like something, and how do you not know where you're going? I don't, like, I could understand if this was like in the day of like pre-cell phones and Waze and Google Maps, but like do you just not know where you're going? I
think the pandemic did something to our brains.
Oh, God.
Just lost any sense of self-awareness.
Like, they were locked down during the pandemic. Like, I remember, like, I was trying to get to a funeral, and like they weren't. And because I didn't live on the reserve, I remember like my cousin. He's an iron worker, so he's like, Mr. Baller. He's like, I can get you on, and I was like, I don't know, and he was like, it's fine. Just make sure you have your status card. So I was like, okay, and so we got to the thing, and like my cousin just like totally got to the blockade. My cousin was like, we got to go to a funeral. The guy was like, we're not letting anyone on. He's like, come on, man. We got to go to a funeral. Handed him the status cards. Cousin's got a big Rolex on because he's like that. And like the guy was like, okay. And he let us through. But like, that it takes some, like, I would not want to be on the receiving side of being told no by my people. I don't like being told no by my people, so I can't imagine being not one of my people and being told no. That would scare the shit out of me.
So people were turned away, yes. Here's a fun tweet from the time. Currently witnessing hundreds of folks from off reserve gather on my res. They are lighting off those candle-powered lanterns in a drought in some of the last remaining dense old-growth Carolinian forest in southern Ontario. A settler-run organization runs these profit events. Several lanterns actually landed close to longhouses that are like, and almost caught the roof on fire. So, yeah, not great. Not great.
This is the thing about Six Nations is we're bumped up against so many places that it's like the encroach. There's a reason why there's so much pushback for any kind of development happening. Like, we have to be that vigilant about people encroaching on our land. It's been like I looked this up because I wanted to make sure, like, out of, like, we have 5% of our original land holdings, right? Like, what we were supposed to have on Six Nations, we have 5% of our original land holdings. And so that is like, when you consider that, like, the original land base started would have started at Dunville, where the mouth of the Grand River starts, all the way up past Orangeville. And
this is the Haldeman Treaty too, right?
Yeah,
where it was
that's the Haldeman
6 miles
Tract.
deep of the Grand or something like that, where
Yeah.
that whole area around the Grand River is all supposed to be protected and for. Like,
and it's like,
fucked.
and it, like, oh, it is so, and like, and we have the receipts because Haudenosaunee people, whether we like it or not, got into bed with the British, quite literally in some cases, quite early on. Our women started marrying their men. And I talked to Rick Hill this year when I was working on an episode about the Royal Proclamation. And I talked to him and he was like, these men were marrying our women, so we needed to keep them close. And so that relationship between the British and the Haudenosaunee was one that became familiar very early on. And so there was a trust implied there and record keeping. Like, our record keeping is quite immaculate. We have the receipts. It's all online. If we went after Canada for everything that the Haudenosaunee, that the Six Nations Confederacy is owed, we would bankrupt the country.
Oh, yeah. I don't think people realize the extent to this. It is like when you like settlers really truly dig into all of colonialism. It is so fascinating and fucked up and just like wild.
Six Nations, I think it's Six Nations Global Solution, I think is what it's called. There's a document that was put out years ago, and I think it's a living document, so it continues to change. But it has all the numbers and all the facts, and it breaks down, it has lots of maps, and it breaks down what was either leased or sold or when and under what circumstances and conditions. And then it also just has the money that was taken to build universities. You're welcome, McGill. Or things like, like the Grand Erie Canal system and all of those lovely things that we never got paid for.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you for all of this. Thank you.
No problem. It's what I do.
So the last bits of this event that took over Six Nations, 2 days before the event, the organizers and a representative of the farm both assured the chief that there would be no lanterns released on the territory and that the event would only include music and vendors. Obviously, that was not the case. So the event posted a statement apology online, as one does. And here's what they said. We want to apologize for any confusion and inconvenience that you may have encountered at last night's Toronto Lights Fest. Our event is one of unity and love, and it is disheartening when things get in the way of our purpose. They also said that they followed all procedures and had proper permits, and that the event did not even come close to oversold. So, what do you think, Falen? Is all forgiven?
And capitalist bullshit, right? Like, it's not about
Unity and
love. It's about money and not having to return money to people, like wanting to keep that, like, whatever, $122 for 2 tickets or whatever. Like, it's about money. You don't give a shit about anyone except money. Like, unity, my ass.
100%. And since the investigation continued since that story happened, because this happened in 2023, the company actually had 52 complaints registered against them with the Business Bureau. Most of them are about events that didn't actually take place, refund complications, and the Bureau has officially urged caution around these type of events. So right on the money there, no pun intended. Truly, just came out of my mouth.
Yeah. Well done.
So there you go. Any last thoughts before we get to your story, Phelan?
I mean, this is what I want to say. I think in terms of Six Nations and the res, I think sometimes people can be, if you're not Indigenous, you can be a little bit afraid to visit the res. You can be like, am I allowed there? And I mean, I know I made it sound like sometimes you're not, but just don't do stupid things like light lanterns off that you're not supposed to.
This is a big question on Reddit is when I was just looking up to see what people in Six Nations are talking about and that kind of thing.
Calm down.
Tons of people being like, am I allowed? Am I allowed?
You're 100% allowed. Just don't act like a jackass. Come and shop. Go to the plaza. in town in Ashwegan. So like it's called the Plaza. There's restaurants in there. There's there's the radio station there. There is a shop called Everything Cornhusk run by Elizabeth Dockstader, Betts Dockstader. Great little store. She's such a gracious host in person. So like stop in there, go to the Village Cafe, great breakfast there. And then a lot of people know the Burger Barn is probably the like a lot of people have been there. It's a big burger restaurant, but they sell other things too. The portions are massive, so don't eat for the entire day. Yeah, but it's like that's a really interesting place because it's I've gone in there. That was the first time on the reserve that I went in, and like I was like there was white people serving me. I was like, what? This is weird. But it's a giant barn of a restaurant. Really good food, can be quite large portions, so just pace yourself. But yes, you are allowed, and like when the powwow happens in the summer, go and check it out. Falen Johnson's house. There's like lots of cool things. Go to the Woodland Cultural Center, which is sort of closer to Brantford, but technically is reserve land. Go to the Woodland Cultural Center. Yeah, just, all of these things are accessible, and lots of people are more than willing to share what they know with you and are happy to feed you a hot bowl of corn soup and a mixed scone. Oh, mixed scone. Don't say scone on Six Nations. You have to say scone. You will get laughed at if you say scone.
I grew up saying scone until people started to correct me to say scone, and now I feel seen.
Yeah, say scone. You'll get laughed at if you say scone. I've seen it happen.
I will also say, if you do go to the Ashwegan Speedway and you go check out a race there, the food in the cafeteria is elite. Very, very tasty. Do not take it out to the race with you, though, or else it will get covered in dust. And that is just you just got to wear your sunglasses, like full poncho and a face mask, and then enjoy yourself. Okay, Falen, you've brought me a juicy piece of folklore or truth, whatever it might be, from your hometown today. I don't know if it's real, if you made it up. So please go ahead, spill your hometown tea.
Okay, so on the theme of misspent youth in Brantford, my sister and I, she'll probably kill me for telling this story. So my older sister and I, my mom was a giant shoplifter growing up. My mom taught us to shoplift. We learned to shoplift. She was like, if you're going to shoplift, you have to buy something and do this. So it's the 90s. Kmart still exists in Brantford at the Linden Park Mall. And we go in and my mom is shoplifting somewhere. And so me and my sister we're like, let's go shoplift somewhere. And so we're in Kmart and we see the Barbie ski set. So it's like the 4 Barbies. You got Barbie, I don't know, Midge, Ken, someone else. And so we see the 4 Barbies. And so we're like, oh my God, let's get the Barbie ski.
That's a bold choice. I feel that must have been a huge box.
Especially because we were small. So it's like the springtime, and so we were like looking at the Barbies, and we each take one, and then we duck behind a shelf, like literally crawl into a shelf behind a cardboard box, and then take our coats off and put the Barbie, like drape the coat over our arm and tuck the Barbie under our arm, and hold it, and then start to walk out, and then we're walking, we're like, should we get the other 2? We should get the other 2. So we're like, we want all 4. And so we go back.
Did you beep in and out, or did they not have the beepers back then?
No, they didn't have the beepers back then. So we go back, we get the other 2, we put them under our arms, and we start to walk out of Kmart, and we get to the parking lot. Like, we make it as far as the parking lot before 2 plainclothes security guards come up and say, I think you girls have something that belongs to Kmart. And my sister, who's older and bolder, she was like, no, we don't. And he was like, yes, you do. And she was like, no, we don't. And he was like, what's in your coat? And then
what's that giant
exactly
square thing?
What's that giant with all of the neon?
Nothing.
Yeah,
not
your coat
anything.
You're basically glowing pink. And so she throws her Barbies at this man and runs, like just takes off, like full speed. And I'm just standing there and I kind of like duck left, duck right, start crying. And I'm like, that's as far as I can go. And I get taken into the little room. So what I find out is my sister does a lap through the mall, like does one full lap through the mall, and like is trying to find my mom or my uncle who is there. And she ends up doing 2 laps through the mall. On the second lap, she sees my uncle sitting down having a Tim Hortons coffee in the food court. And she stops and he's chatting with someone else. And she's like, who the heck is this? Like, is it safe to stop? And so but she's out of breath because she's been doing these laps for the mall. And so she sits down and she looks up and it's Walter Gretzky talking to my uncle. And she's this sweaty little kid, just like panting and like sweating. And my uncle's like, what's wrong with you? And she's like, and she didn't know it was him at the time, right? Because like she wouldn't have known. She was just like, got these hot Barbies that she's trying to save. But by this time, the security guards come up behind her and catch her, and she's got nowhere to go. And so she gets dragged into the room with me. And then
wait, Walter Gretzky didn't vouch for her? He didn't stick up for her?
Yeah,
That's
he
what I
wasn't
would
like,
expect.
take your hands off of her. How dare you? Yeah. No, I think it's pretty obvious when like they uncovered the 2 boxes of Barbies under her coat. She looked
So wait, where
pretty
was your
guilty.
mom this whole time?
She was
Just out
shoplifting. She was shoplifting in Kmart. They called her into the office, like into the shoplifting office, and so we're sitting there. And they call her in, and so she comes in with a stroller because she's got my little brother Danny with her at the time. And we know his stroller is just stuffed full of goods because she loved a baby for that. You know, she could just like put a bunch of things behind him, and no one was going to check the baby. And so she gets pulled into this room, and then we have to talk to them, and then they're like, "Don't you think your mom would notice if you just had 4 new Barbies?" And we're like, "Yeah," and she'd probably be like, "Way to go, girls." We're like, "You're asking the wrong questions, sir." We didn't say that, obviously. But
So he didn't check her stroller at all?
No. So we got a big talking to, and they were like, "Oh, you're banned from Kmart for 5 years."
Oh, shit.
And I was like, "Guess what, Kmart? You're not going to make it 5 years."
And they didn't.
And then I cursed Kmart. So we laughed. We get into the car, and my mom's like, "Don't you ever do that to me again." She was like, "Do you know how much stuff I have in your brother's cart?" Yeah, so we got banned from Kmart for 5 years, and Walter Gretzky did nothing to help us. I know.
That is the fucking funniest story. It's so funny.
Oh man, we stole a lot. I mean, we stole more than we got
Listen, I kind of
caught.
almost, just based off of, I don't know your mom, but from what you've told me so far, I almost expected her to be like, honestly, great diversion tactic. Got away with so much more than I normally could because the eyes are on the kids. So this could have been like an ongoing thing. You could have kept it rolling.
Yeah, she probably could have got like a VCR or something.
There you go. Falen's on the distraction.
She might have.
There you go.
No, that was definitely we never did distraction work, but we did stand at the end of aisles and like had an elaborate signaling system. Of
Nice.
Baseball.
Okay, I believe this is a true story, including the Walter Gretzky part.
Well, the Walter Gretzky part is the only lie.
Oh, that was so good. It's just Walter Gretzky would be the guy in that moment. He would be that guy.
I know. I wanted to tell
Rest
you
in
that
peace.
story, but I also wanted to just spice in some more Walter Gretzky for us.
Oh, I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you did. When I tell you I feel so whole having talked to you now. It feels so great. It feels so amazing. Falen, thank you so much for coming on Canardian. Where can people find you? How can people support the work that you're doing? Tell me about your podcast, all those things.
Oh gosh. Well, you can check out The Secret Life of Canada, all the places that people get podcasts.
I'm Katie Lohr. You can find me through all the links in the show notes. And make sure you subscribe to my newsletter, Pod the North. The Canardian theme song is by my very talented partner, Mark Allen, with support from his own hometown buddies, People Like Us. And if you like the podcast or you know somebody from Brantford or Six Nations of the Grand River, please make sure you share it with that friend or somewhere around on social media, wherever you hang out. See you around town.
They're going to hate us, aren't they?
Yeah.